Chapter 17 is over tissues, organs, and organ systems, and this really starts one of my favorite sections in the class, which is on how your body works. I think this is a practical section because there will be times in your life whenever you are sick or a loved one is sick or your pet is sick, and it's really helpful to know what your organs are supposed to do and kind of how they do that, so you can understand what's going wrong when you're sick, and then also kind of the method that the doctor or the veterinarian is using to try to correct that problem. Like all living things, animals are highly organized. We've discussed that they begin life as a fertilized zygote, and that zygote is going to develop and the cells are going to multiply as it's growing inside the womb. And as those cells multiply, they're going to start to have distinct differences. Remember, we talked about stem cells. Those stem cells are totipotent, which means they can become any type of cell. And as they become the different types of cells, those cells start to group together. And the groups of the cells that are similar are called tissues. Different tissues will come together to form organs through a very, very structured process. There's actually a whole branch of science called embryology that studies how this happens. But as the organs come together, multiple organs will work together for a common goal, and those organs that are kind of grouped together are called organ systems. The four general or basic types of tissues are called epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. Epithelial tissue, or epithelium, is composed of very tightly packed sheets of cells, and this covers your organs or your outer surfaces, like your skin, and it lines the hollow organs inside your body, as well as your vessels, so your veins and your arteries, and the body cavities. You've got a lining of epithelial tissue inside your chest cavity and inside your abdominal cavity called the serosa that has an important function as a barrier. So in most cases, epithelial tissue does act as a barrier between the organ that it's lining and then something else. So the epithelium that's lining your stomach keeps the contents of your stomach from spilling out in your internal environment, which would be very bad, obviously, if that happened. The acid would cause much havoc inside your body. And then your skin is composed primarily of epithelial tissue, and it acts as a barrier between your internal environment and the outside world. In this histological cross-section of part of a trachea, there's a layer of epithelial tissue that is lined with tiny, tiny hairs that are called cilia. And these hairs, you can kind of see them at the top of the cells. They beat constantly. They're constantly moving. And what they do is they propel dust and other foreign materials up and out of your airways, which is why you cough. You'll actually cough up material. That's your cilia that are causing that to move upward so that you don't inhale it and doesn't get it down into your lungs. Beneath the layer of epithelium, which is outlined with the red box, is a layer of connective tissue, which is the next type of tissue we're going to discuss. Connective tissue is composed of more loosely organized cells, and they are contained within a matrix. Depending on the type of connective tissue, and there are about 6 different types, the components of the matrix will be different. But you can kind of think of it like a Jell-O mold. So you've got bits and pieces of fruit in there, and the fruit would be the cells, and then the Jell-O component would be the matrix. So that's kind of what we're talking about with the matrix, and then cells inside the matrix. Loose connective tissue, which is shown in the upper left-hand side, is what's found under your skin's epithelial layer. The matrix has both collagen and elastin fibers that are very important components of that. Adipose tissue is another type of connective tissue. It's shown in the bottom right, and it's made up of fat cells that will store fat for energy or insulation or protection. Cartilage and bone are 2 more types of connective tissue. This histological slide shows both. The zone of endochondral ossification, you can kind of see that on the slide, is the area where cartilage is turning into bone. And this occurs as a child is maturing into an adult and their bones are growing. That's how your bones grow, is you make cartilage first and then that turns into bone. A 5th type of connective tissue is fibrous connective tissue, and it forms the tendons that connect muscle to bones, and also the ligaments that connect bones to at joints. One other type of connective tissue that may be surprising to you is blood. Your blood is made up of both a liquid component and lots of different kinds of cells. The three general types of cells that are found in your blood are white blood cells, red blood cells, and platelets. Your white blood cells are an important part of your immune system and are also involved in killing off pathogens and reacting to allergies. So in the slide here, on the upper left-hand side, the types of cells are kind of diagrammed out and labeled. The neutrophils, the eosinophils, the basophils, the lymphocytes, and the monocytes would be the 5 different types of white blood cells. And then on the bottom right-hand slide there, you can see an actual blood smear. So the little red round objects are the red blood cells, and then the larger objects that are kind of a purpley pink color are different types of white blood cells. So the one that has the arrow pointed, the red arrow, that would be a basophil because it's got dark purple granules. The one above that would be an eosinophil because it's got red granules. The one kind of in the middle with the lobulated nucleus would be a neutrophil, and that's primarily used to kill off bacteria, destroy bacteria that enter your blood. And then the one that's actually to the left of that would be a monocyte, and that's kind of an important white blood cell for chronic infections, so long-term viral infections, long-term bacterial infections, or fungal infections that can be involved in that. So your platelets, which are little tiny things, you can see a little tiny platelet kind of in the left-hand side of the blood smear, but that's involved or very important to allow your blood to clot. So if you didn't have platelets, when you hurt yourself, you would just keep bleeding. You would never stop bleeding, so you wouldn't live very long. And then your red blood cells are the last type that is found in your blood, and they're important because they carry oxygen and carbon dioxide. So kind of they're the transit between your lungs and your cells to get nutrients to your lungs, or to your cells from your lungs, and then take the waste away from the cells back to the lungs. Muscle is the third type of the third type of tissue that we're going to discuss, and it is the only type of tissue that's able to contract. So anytime you have movement, that's because of some component of that is going to be muscle tissue. So the reason you can walk around, the reason that food moves through your internal system, through your gut, is because of muscle tissue. Most muscle is composed of bundles of thin, long, cylindrical cells that are called muscle fibers. And these muscle fibers contain actin and myosin, which are the 2 proteins that work together to allow the muscle cells to contract. The 3 types of muscles that are found in your body are skeletal muscle, which is voluntary. You can control that. Smooth muscle, which is involuntary. It's what lines your digestive tract and propulses food through your intestines. And cardiac muscle, which is also involuntary because it allows your heart to beat and you don't control that. And it allows your heart to pump that blood throughout your body. Both skeletal and cardiac muscle are considered to be striated, so they've got stripes or lines. And the reason they do that is just because of the way the muscle fibers are arranged in that tissue. Smooth muscle is not striated just because of the way the muscle fibers line up. Nervous tissue is the 4th tissue type, and it is made up of cells that are called neurons that conduct and transmit electrical impulses. The main function of the nervous system is to help your body sense stimuli in the environment around you and then process that stimuli, react to the stimuli. So for example, if you touched a hot pot or a hot pan, your nervous system, through a type of receptor, a pain receptor that's called a nociceptor, will send a signal to your brain that the object is hot, and at the same time it sends a signal to your spinal cord where your withdrawal reflex is initiated, and so your arm jerks back without even conscious thought. That withdrawal reflex is very important for the preservation of life as we know it, because it gets you away from something painful very quickly without your brain having to actually process it. Here's a slide that shows the type of nerves that innervate muscle tissue, so those are called motor neurons. You can see the large cell bodies are connected by thinner tendrils, and those tendrils are called axons and dendrites, and they allow the nerve cells to communicate with each other.